welcome to this edition of our midday magazine program, Press Hour. Today we'll touch on Parliament, given that the Parliament wrapped up deliberations a few days ago, and a lot of members of Parliament have been hailing what they have done during the session, voting more than 5 bills, with one or some that have to do with the very essence of living together. We'll also touch on this aspect that has to do with Cameroon borrowing a lot of money and trying to see how the public service can clean up the payroll and bring sanity to bear on the management of public resources, given that we are borrowing a lot to be able to build our nation and to look forward to our emergence in 2035. To do that with me on the program this midday, we have Barrister Mokum Mujem Fombat. Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you.
We are old friends, but I don't know why I like calling you Metro Fombat. All the same. There is Elias Ngalame. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Quite some time you haven't been on Press Hour.
That's true.
There is Meka George Abesolo. You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's also quite some time you haven't been on Press Hour. I should say Emmanuel Tumanjong of the Associated Press will be joining us shortly. And so I don't want to ask you any question, but I'd like us to move straight to our machines and get what the papers have been writing on this week. Our press review, then we'll come back and have the discussions.
The IMF extended credit facility to Cameroon. Peter Mavani Moronge's resignation as senator, the Bear Herbert and Akara Muna tic-tac, plus the Anglophone crisis and many more animated the papers this week. Let's begin reading the Lone National Bilingual Daily Cameroon Tribune Wednesday, wherein on behalf of President Biya, the Secretary General of the Presidency of the Republic signed a note which lodged IMF's gesture to approve some 400 billion from CFA for the implementation of an economic and financial reform program that spans 2017 to 2020. The aid, the paper adds, is expected to help the country recover from the twin shocks of the slump in oil prices and security threats plaguing the Smack-Sap region. Same day, Wednesday, the lone private English daily, The Garden Post, intimates that IMF mounts pressure on the government to flush out what the paper terms unproductive workers from the public service. But earlier on, that's on Monday, the English bi-weekly The Post newspaper deduced that Cameroonians will soon be grappling with a wave of salary cuts should the government fully give in to the IMF program. Well, Peter Moronge leaves the Senate. Cameroon Tribune Thursday reports his resignation during the Senate's second ordinary session for the 2017 legislative year. The Garden Post on this Thursday edition says will allow him concentrate on his new role as president of the National Commission for the Promotion of Bilingualism and Multiculturalism. The resignation, the Post Weekend edition explains that the position of a senator is incompatible with duties including a non-elective office. But before former Senator Moronge could tender his resignation from the Upper House of Parliament on July 5, Barrister Akara Muna diagnosed the Anglophone crisis and proposed a way forward in a center-spread write-up published on the Garden Post Monday. Captioned "Things Fall Apart," the barrister has been subjected to a one-on-one criticism by former CRTV journalist Bear Herbert. The Voice newspaper puts both articles side by side for readers' appreciation. The Garden Post Friday banners PCC OK's schools to promote all pupils and students to next class. The paper says the Presbyterian Education Authority has also expressed readiness to fully begin the 2017-2018 academic year in 2 Anglophone regions come September. Cameroon Tribune, the Garden Post, the Post, and the Voice newspapers all came back to the press release from the Procureur General of the Yaoundé Court of Appeal on the post-mortem examinations carried out on late Bishop Bala. And these private papers and more also reported on the recent appointments within the state broadcaster, the Cameroon Radio Television, although with adjacent analysis. Well, that does it on our press review today. I look forward to coming your way, God willing, Sunday.
Okay, thanks very much, Larry Efandi. I'd like us to begin with the nation, or parliament rather. What's your take on the series of bills? There are so many that touched on the legal department, especially that creating a common law division at the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think as a lawyer and as an Anglophone, I think that bill is welcome because that forms part of the points put forward by the Anglophone lawyers. So I'm sure that bill goes to enhance our living together.
Okay. Is there any other one that touched your interest as a person besides
yes,
that one?
I think I was touched by the Economic Commission, the reforms of this institution. I think many Cameroonians have over the years cried that the institution has become moribund, and there was need to change, to really precise their role and make them impactful in society.
Okay. George, is any of the bills voted that touched you from Parliament?
Yes, the most important bill for me was the reform of the National and Social Economic Council, which is much awaited for its inertia for many years. So we hope that with this reform, it will put its weight on advising the president and the governments on the much better decision and economic program this nations needs the most, and which has become the center of our economy and economic and political situations right now.
Okay. One of the key things which happened at the Senate was the resignation of Mr. Peter Mafani Musonge. I remember in March or so, he stepped down as the parliamentary group leader because of his being appointed into that the commission that has to do with our bilingualism and multiculturalism. But people were asking the question, why it's as if the resignations are coming piecemeal.
I don't think the
piecemeal in the sense that one at a time.
Yeah. I don't think it is. It comes in piecemeal because you see the law on the standing orders of the Senate, Article 22 clearly spells out situations where there is incompatibility, and they say a senator cannot at the same time hold a public non-elective post. So as soon as from the time when Mr. Mafani was appointed the president of the Commission on Bilingualism, he knew that normally he was supposed to give up the mandate as a senator. You know, the mandate as his role, his position as a senatorial group leader, that is more of a party issue, and then his position as senator is a national issue. So I think that was but normal that he starts by giving up the party responsibility before now giving up the national responsibility. So I think the procedure is normal. Okay,
but there are people who observed that he has done one, but he's supposed to have done for almost all other offices he's holding, public offices, notably that which has to do with the national orders.
I don't think the law here won't look. The law says a senator should not hold another post that is compatible.
Okay.
There is no law on the national order that says that it cannot be compatible. So here we are looking at what the standing rules of the Senate say.
So, which in other words, it means that it is a public office, but which is compatible with his role as president of the National Commission on Bilingualism.
Yes, I think that here we have a legal vacuum, because the law does not clearly spell out which posts are incompatible. They highlight some, like in the case of senators, they say you cannot be, as a senator, you cannot be a mayor, you cannot be mayor, you cannot be well, you cannot hold any other public non-elective post. But again, the catch here also is that when they say public non-elective post, it is not also clearly defined, because we can say the position of Grand Chancellor that is an elective, a public post that is not elective. So again, our main problem here is that the law does not clearly define which are the posts that are incompatible.
I see you shake your head in.
Yes, I think, no, I see it otherwise. I think that we really have to hail Mr. Mafani Musonge for the bold step, because these are very rare situations in our country. If we look at our realities, there are people with such accumulation in spite of the laws, but they still hold on to their positions. So if we have a leader who is leading by example, it is just an indication that others should follow suit. At least we must begin from somewhere. So he has started it. He has put on the torchlight. Let the others follow.
Okay. Now, I'd like to come back to you, Barrister. You just made mention about the law, and the law also says that we should not hold public offices. If you hold that of the Grand Chancellor, that is a public office.
Yeah, so I say the law says that as a senator you cannot hold a public non-elective office. Those are incompatible.
Is the trick here around the word elective?
It would not really be that, because Grand Chancellor is non-elective, it's also appointed. Yeah, but me, I think that, like he was saying, I think what we should ask ourselves is, how do you have a law that does not have implementation mechanism or sanctions? I mean that the law does not say if you hold those two offices, what is the sanction? That is where the problem is. So now they leave it at the free will of the people who have the two offices to choose. And if you don't choose, nothing is done to you, unfortunately.
Okay.
The law maybe would have precised that in case within a period you don't choose one, you lose both. Maybe it will force them. But the law does not. There's no implementation mechanism on that particular aspect.
Okay, we want to welcome Emmanuel, but let me ask George. When you hear them talk and you see what's happening, because this is not, resigning as he did is exceptional, because there are people in the country who hold more than one office. Yet you have a mayor and a government minister, mayor and this and so on and so forth, or a mayor and this and so on. So when you see what he does, would you salute what he has done as an example, or you would say it's just a responsibility we're supposed to execute?
Well, it is both. I mean, we have to salute what is, for now, an exceptions and not the rule that many of the public officials have abide with. So what Prime Minister Musonge did, it's an example to follow, and I hope that many will follow his steps. Okay.
But let's go back to what the law says. What happens to his seat?
The standing rules of Senate, they are clear, ambiguous somehow. If you look at Article 20 of the standing rules, it says that in case of interruption of the mandate of a senator, that is, wherever there is a vacancy, except a vacancy by death, the substitute is called upon to take the seat until the mandate runs out, which means here it says that once there is a vacancy, but for vacancy caused by death, the law automatically calls, so you don't need any procedure, the law calls the substitute to come and sit and continue the mandate. But when you go to Article 21, it takes now, that is where the problem lies. It says that for senators appointed, in case of vacancy, even vacancy by death, the head of state has to appoint another senator to sit in to complete the mandate. So that is where the problem lies now. So you ask yourself, in the case of Honorable Mafani, he was an appointed senator. There is a vacancy. His seat is vacant now. But by the provisions of Article 21, the person that has to come in must be appointed by a presidential decree. So we must have to wait for a presidential decree to appoint the person who has to come. I understand many questions.
Why have a substitute when he or she cannot automatically fill the vacuum when you are not there?
So that is where there is that legal ambiguity. Because for elected senators, they are elected alongside their substitute. For appointed senators. Unfortunately, the presidential decree appoints a senator and the substitute. But now it says that in case of vacancy of an appointed senator, the president has to appoint somebody to take the seat. So the question we ask ourselves, why then, what is the role of the substitute? Or why then did the head of state appoint the substitute? I think that this is a problem of the law which the senators normally would have. Because they actually voted their standing rules. And strange enough, 100 of them, I'm sure at the time they voted, not one of them saw this ambiguity. Because if they saw this ambiguity, they would have rectified it.
Which means the standing orders give the head of state the possibility of voting somebody, rather appointing somebody other than the substitute.
Of course, because the law says that the head of state shall appoint another person to take that seat. The law does not say the head of state should appoint the substitute.
Okay.
So the head of state is not under any obligation. But I think faced with this ambiguity, with this embarrassment, I'm sure the safest thing to do in order to save face is for the head of state to immediately appoint the substitute to fill this vacuum while the Senate sits up to rectify their own standing rules.
Okay. Let me come to Emmanuel, who is just coming. We've had very rare situations where vacancies have been filled, and we know quite a number of senators, both those by death and those who were called to other duties. Senator Jikong, Senator Nkwine, the son of Fontaine, and now, but no post has been filled. He just said the question of death, it's supposed to remain vacant, and I understand why. Because they are suspecting that their substitute could precipitate.
Might be responsible for the death. In order to say the truth, it's a normal thing. I mean, that was a smart article.
You call it a smart word. Okay. Why is it over 3 or 4 or 5 senators are absent, about 95 of them now? So should we say it's because it's functioning normally, and that they have their normal decorum that is attained, and so they can carry out deliberations without any problem? Or else the President of the Republic should have a tight hand to be able to call snap elections to fill the offices, or appoint those he's supposed to appoint to fill the gap.
No, Joe, you have to look at the way Cameroon's parliament operates, whether it's the lower or the upper house. Excuse me. It is that generally, for the elections I've covered in Cameroon for over 20 years plus, is that the ruling party does everything to have absolute majority in parliament. So what happens here is that within the Senate, that's the upper house, the ruling party, that's the CPDM, has absolute majority. If you remove 5 of those, or even maybe about 10 of those senators from the house, whether it's by someone by being called to other duties, or maybe staying, or maybe by death or by incapabilities, the truth about it is that the party continues to control. So the head of state, by being, like almost, I'll put that in quotes, indifferent, is simply because he knows that there are no stakes, which means the ruling party will continue to keep its majority in parliament. In this case, if you see, I'm very happy that Metri Mujam is here, because Barrister Mujam is here, because he's giving us some very good, technical explanations as to how the laws were even shaped, before those elections were called up, and that now you have the House functioning. The idea is keeping the majority, and so that if there are bills that come in, they'll be voted. If there are no bills, and there's all these guys who are in parliament, most of them are former government workers. So, but I'll come back to the fact that what Josh said a short while ago is salutary for the former PM to have resigned. But the resignation, because of the ambiguity and the the cloud surrounding it, makes it cosmetic, in that he has some other duties. If he had resigned while he was not having the new appointments, it would have been dramatic in a sense. There would have been music. People would have been wondering why he did all of this, because he has other duties like Grand Chancellor of the of National Order of Valor and other key duties like the one he's just been given by the head of state. So in essence, it's almost virtual. And this is somebody everybody knows. PM Musonge as somebody who's very hardworking, who has intellectual and professional capabilities. So, but if he does this, and the cloud is still surrounding, sometimes we ask questions as to why the government keeps silent, and after he resigns in such a key position.
Okay.
But if he had resigned from, for instance, the new appointments, and also from the Grand Chancellor
no, you take the most recent.
Yeah, no, you can resign from all the 3 posts.
Even including the most recent?
Because the reasons have not been clear enough as to why he resigned.
Because he wanted to concentrate on the National Commission on Bilingualism and Multiculturalism.
That is what he says.
Yes.
That is just what he says. He might have simply told the head of state that he would have simply told the head of state that I can keep the new appointment because I have these other appointments. Those are the technicalities here. The idea that we perceive the issues as though, although it's the head of state who appoints, the head of state could still meet a case where some of those appointees say, no, please, I can't keep this post.
Then you will not appoint them.
Yes,
so it will not come to public notice. I'm sure there are people who do that behind the scenes. I'm sure there are people who do that behind the scenes. But generally, you know that human nature would want, because those who can exercise would say, give me the functions, I'll carry them out. It's the law that has to limit it.
But you have many of those functions to carry. You know that we have had press reports where the PM, while in office, has had several problems, maybe some health problems, and it was interpreted to be too much work. So it keeps on.
Even people who lie on their beds still have health problems. So
and sometimes one asks too much work. What constitutes too much work? At what point do we consider work to be too much or to be less? So I think it's again, we cannot go to such a slippery ground.
Okay, that's slippery. That's right.
Why do people like? Okay, this is personalized egoistic reasons why they like occupying more than one office. Thanks very much. I'd like us to move on to the next topic, which has to do with the series of loans we are contracting and trying to clean our payroll. I mean, the government struggling to clean our payroll. And before that, I'd like us to have, because Parliament discussed that as well, we have this kicker on the closing ceremony in Parliament. That's both Senate and the National Assembly. A joint report.
The second ordinary session of Parliament for 2017 has come and gone with positive contributions made by senators. Senate President Maxine Njifenji praised his collaborators for their positive contributions and fruitful discussions in spite of their political leanings. Senator Nyat commended the economic and financial initiative taken by government with major projects that have a huge impact on growth and the business environment in the country. The President of the Senate stressed on the 9 bills adopted and urged government to ensure that no leader of a public establishment or public corporation to take advantage of his position to enjoy special favors or personal or family privileges. Senator Nyat at the end urged senators to use their 3-month recess period to sensitize their populations on tolerance and mutual respect for peace to reign in the country.
It's been 30 days of profound legislative and intense control of government action for these members of the National Assembly taken up for recess. But before, the essence of the 9 bills scrutinized in commissions and adopted in plenary after sustained debates was highlighted. For House Speaker Honorable Kavage Jibril, from the Code of Military Justice to the institution of a common law division in the Supreme Court, down to the regulations guiding the functioning of the Economic and Social Council, the members of the National Assembly showed their commitment to legislate on issues that carve out a sane economic and political environment. While he commended government's attachment to promoting equality and justice, the presence of the head of government, Philemon Yang, and other cabinet ministers at the 2 question time plenaries of the session is a clear indication of the volition of governments to meet the aspirations and needs of the population. The humanitarian gesture of the Michael and Mauritia Poche Foundation in the 10 regions of Cameroon to the tune of 1.8 billion CFA francs, with over 8,000 patients consulted and treated, as well as the election of honorable
One of the things which government discussed this week, or rather Parliament discussed during the session, was the debt burden of the country, and they talked extensively. You know, the President of the Republic issued a statement the Presidency of the Republic rather issued a statement this week on government having contracted a 400 billion loan with the IMF, and the Minister of the Economy also signed a 30 billion loan to be able to improve electricity. The country is borrowing. Can a country stay without borrowing money? Yes, Judge. As an economist.
It depends.
Okay.
It always depends. Sometimes when the demands of the nations are high and the offer or the financing is not immediately available, the governments choose the options to borrow.
Okay.
In our current state in Cameroon, we are facing budget deficits of close to 400 billion francs CFA, which is primarily due to the drop of oil prices and the unexpected expenses to fight Boko Haram, which is, for what the government has spent so far, is quite the same amount that we are borrowing from IMF.
Okay. And now, when you look at what the government is doing, would you say government is tailoring its view of the economy to meet Horizon 2035?
I don't even look at 2035 as something serious, because Cameroon has a lot of burdens, you know, financial burdens to take care of instantly. The case we have now, for instance, is just an unexpected, you know, budget deficit like that of oil and that of insecurity. Take note, oil has been on the balance for about, say, 3 years now or 2, and then Boko Haram is about 3-4 years for us. It's been about 6-7 years for Nigeria, and maybe expanding to the other sections. So what the IMF did for us, and IMF lent the money to Cameroon simply because they had tangible proof. Take note that Cameroon has been borrowing a lot of money from China all this while. Most of the big projects we have in Cameroon, I don't want to list them, there are too many.
Yes.
They come from energy and infrastructure. The money comes from China. The issue, like George just said, is about the way we manage the economy back here.
Okay.
Trying to play an impromptu solution to what, and then you keep away, you try to sideline the long-term solution, which had always been on the pipeline, but now they have been shelved at the corner because they want to resolve an oil crisis, a budget deficit coming from oil crisis and insecurity. Sometimes has a very big mixture and complication.
Okay, we'll come back to the management of it. But when you look at what the government is doing, government is investing mainly in infrastructural development, be it electricity, be it road, be it the construction, so as these are tangible places where you can see what government is doing with part of the money. And one of the complaints is that revenue has dropped because of the EU-Cameroon Partnership Agreement. Do you accept that, George, before I move to him?
Yes, I have to accept it based on the result released by the Ministry of Economy that we have lost about 600 million francs CFA just in the first phase of the implementation of that trade agreement.
Okay.
It has not been replaced by the growth of our exportations or the productive growth. So that's where the question mark lies on how will it be when we implement the second phase, which is to enter into effect before the end of 2017.
Okay. Now, when you hear Judge speak and you see what is happening, would you, and you see the investments where we are going, what's your take? Shall we be able to move up to 2035 as such, given the tangible investments government is undertaking?
Not really. I really have that fear, because even the investments, there's total reliance on these foreign banks. You know, sometimes when they sign these agreements, you hear that Cameroon provides a certain portion, certain percentage, and the foreign banks provide a certain percentage. And sometimes there's delay even in the beginning of the project because the portion of Cameroon is not yet there. You remember last year or last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, the World Bank issued a report on the debt burden of Cameroon that it was really worrying, and that in sub-Saharan Africa, Cameroon was really topping. I think I did the report for Thomson Reuters on that, and that the long-term implication is that which does not quickly meet the eye. They cited the example of Exim Bank or China generally, as he mentioned, that have been pumping us with a lot of loan, and it makes the government turns a blind eye on some of the investment regulations that those investors are carrying out in Cameroon. Take the case of forestry. There's a lot of hoax and corruption going on in forest exploitation, and most of these forest exploiters come from this region where the money is coming in, and the law is soft on them. So these are some of the long-term implications. So the investments are there, fine, but at what pace are they going? You see, for example, you take an electricity Lompanga or whichever electricity project. At times they will tell you that it will run for 5-6 years, but sometimes it takes more than 10 years because the money comes in piecemeal. It doesn't come in the chunk that was budgeted.
Okay. You wanted to react before I get to
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Galame just said. The issue is
one.
Yes, the issue is if we are going to too much borrowing, it's because we don't have a productive power to generate income. That's one of the major reasons why we go continuously borrowing. We have fallow lands where we can produce a lot of things. We have mines, we have mine reserves, oil reserves, and many other things. I think the only area we really exploit in Cameroon that is a little bit visible, and that's where our economy is shocked, is weighed down. That is oil. But you have other produce like rice. You have maize, or produce corn. There are many other things.
Generally.
In fact, these are areas where Cameroon could have paid a lot of attention to and even keep away all of this. Because if we produce a lot, we have our population is not big enough, but we can sell some of these produce to neighboring countries, especially like Nigeria, where the goods can be sold at high prices and will be bought because they have population pressure. So in this case, for instance, we only continue to borrow because we do sometimes our economic planning is not substantial enough to meet some of these shocks. Because imagine if we import rice, for instance, from China, and China has a very big population. The day China has winter or maybe they have drought, what will happen? Rice here,
their cultivation does not depend on the season. So it's out of season. Like a former French president said, if we have to develop, then we don't rely on seasons to be able to revolutionize our agriculture.
There are other economic shocks.
Yes, I'll come to you. What about the legal implications of our borrowing?
I think
when you borrow, you must pay. That's the legal implication.
When you borrow, you must pay, and you're not only paying the principal amount, you are paying with interest. So there are a lot of financial consequences. But I think that what the government normally, or I think the intention of those borrowing and the government that is receiving, is that this money should be able to transform the economy. They should be able to invest in infrastructural development that is productive. For example, electricity dam. When we invest in electricity dam, we know that we will, after that, get energy that could be able to boost the economy. The government normally is supposed to pay particular attention on revolutionizing or mechanizing our agriculture, which is not the situation. But the main thing there even is that how are we ensuring that that money is used effectively? That is where the problem is.
Okay, and let me come to the Economist. I read from a number of newspapers that those lending the money were giving conditions. Do they give you conditions when you want to borrow?
Sure.
Yes, they have to give you conditions in order to ensure that the principal of the loan plus the interest will be paid back timely. The conditions, which precisely with the IMF loans, are very much welcome because they come to address the distortion and inefficiency that we have observed in our own governance and management when they require that public owned and stated company must be performance. I will not cite the company here, but they are draining the treasury, the public treasury, into have to disburse for them just to maintain, to pay the salary of those companies. When the foreign company comes into comparison, that company in the same industry or sectors makes much more money and revenue and even pay taxes to the government. So that has been addressed by the limitations of mandates that a general manager can have no more than 6 years, for example. So some of those inefficiencies, and I continue to believe that we have not been able to address. The agricultural sector, for example, for many years we have not brought the agricultural productions of cocoa or coffee above the 300,000 tons every year. So we have an inefficiency there. In other areas, we have not integrated or add the value added that can generate a capacity to export. And we continue to be deficit in the both agricultural and the commercials trade-off. So if we don't manage for the 3 years of these loans, I'm very afraid that we will have to need another indebted country initiatives in order to just erase the debts in to look sustainable. So this is an alarm that
you sound. I like the way you put the analysis there. But one of the things which the lenders are insisting on is to clean the payroll, and that there are ghost workers. And the Ministry of Finance was organizing a workshop seminar the other day to be able to empower the different ministerial departments to come up with their own budgets and the payroll. Shifting the paradigm or shifting the responsibility from the Ministry of Finance or Finance to the different ministries. Will that be able to curb this idea of ghost workers?
It's a key element in addressing the economy in Cameroon, in that a good chunk of the money that is generated, whether by taxes or maybe the little agricultural goods that we produce, most of this gets sunken inside the public sector, because I think the recent figures we had were supposed to be about 50,000 ghost workers under the government's payroll. And in this case, imagine 50,000 people going on a monthly basis to receive salaries when they don't do the job. You understand? We have a clue about some of it, in that when the government went to IMF in the mid-90s, the government asked the IMF, for a similar PRGF loan. What happened was that the government, the IMF gave as one of the conditions to retrench workers. The government actually did. But when the government did, it is alleged that some of these workers came back, changed their names, and there was a lot of mix-up, that the same guys who had been retrenched came back, put back their names on the payroll and were being paid, behind the scene. What you call ghost workers.
Yes.
The issue here.
When you say what you say,
yes.
Government has undertaken Operation Antelope. Government has undertaken Operation CGPES. Government has undertaken CGPES 2, and so on and so forth. How would you explain? Because when it was manual, one would understand that, okay, it's easier, but when it's computerized, still yet we have such situations coming up in the public service and finance. So is it the idea which in English you would say, quote and unquote, garbage in, garbage out? Or why should we have a recurrence of such fictitious workers in spite of government's effort to clean the payroll?
Yes,
I'll come to you, John, shortly.
I think it all boils down to the issue of governance. The corruption issue in our country cuts across board. It is a matter of mentality first, and secondly, it's like becoming part and parcel of the system.
It's already become
generally, because the second coming to these austerity measures is a clear indication that the first measures did not work. In spite, we know all the pains that the Cameroonians sacrificed in the first austerity measures in the 90s. Now coming back again to another set of austerity measures is a clear indication that there was complete failure. For those of us who come from forest region, they say if you come across the same tree twice in the forest, it's an indication that you have missed your way. This is the picture I give in this second coming on this IMF austerity measures in Cameroon, and it's an indication that we don't have a coherent economic policy. So we don't take measures halfway. If we want to clean the payroll, the system there should be an economic policy that provides total cleaning. I mean,
now, when you talk about total cleaning, how would you get to total cleaning when you're dealing with the same people in and out?
No, if you apply, we are in the they call it Android digital age. If you take forensic measures for every government civil servant, it is very clear for the system to point out the fake ones and those who are authentic.
Okay. Would you? He's just talking about stringent measures in management. And as a legalist, what would you see which government doesn't see for now?
I think for me, I think this issue is simple. We need to do what we call a forensic investigation on the effectiveness of the civil servants. Like we say, they have done a series of censuses, and each time there is still this issue of ghost workers. I think that the reason why we keep on having these ghost workers is because there is a streamline, there is complicity all along the line. Under normal circumstances, every person who works has an immediate supervisor that could attest to the effective presence of that person. I take the case of a principal. The government has never attempted to effectively investigate and see, because I know if they investigate, we are going to get a good number of situations where principals, the complicity of principals is clearly spelled out, and most of us will fail to understand this is embezzlement of public funds. If you receive a salary when you are not working, that's embezzlement of public funds, and this is an offense that is clearly or strictly
punishable by the law.
The sanctions are extremely high. The amount by Article 82 of the 84 of the Penal Code, for any amount above 500,000, you are liable to life jail.
Huh?
That is what the law says. Those are the provisions of Article 84 on investment of public property. So I think that our main problem here is a problem of morality. And then also, I think that the population also has a key role to play. You know, I'll take an example in what is happening in the north with the Boko Haram situation. The population has actually come out to assist the government in identifying
our defense forces.
Our defense forces. I think that we know all of this. We know a good number of these ghost civil servants who are abroad and receiving salaries.
There are some even in the country.
It's upon us to give out the information, denounce, and if we denounce and proper investigations are done and sanction those who are the corporate sanction and the sanctions published, I think the message will go around and we'll have a curb in this issue of ghost workers.
Okay, Emmanuel, before we come to George, we wanted to...
I have to recall that during the first, during the mid-90 IMF loan, which we gave a conditionality of retrenchment of workers. The reason for which these workers were retrenched was that the pay package, the government had to cut down its pay package to the civil servants and then give this money to them instantly to go and invest and boost out the private sector. The idea was to encourage the private sector, because here the private sector would have swollen out and gave means for the government to earn like taxes, you know, from private investment. But it happened that even while this was done,
I know people who voluntarily retired
exactly,
so as to become business people.
Exactly. But while this was done, there were two major issues that occurred later on. The government slashed salaries again by about 70%, which means if you were earning about 300,000 francs, you end up earning just about 100,000 francs a month. This caused corruption because people could not live instantly, you know, without a major socio-economic shock. The third point is, now, which continues to hover over the issue of government handling of economic restructuring, is that even those who go to invest or those who come to invest in the country find it very difficult find it difficult to function because of bottlenecks, harassment, high taxes, which cause the investment climate really difficult to handle. All of this have compounded, has weighed down on the way, even if the government would not have been going for loans.
Okay.
It has weighed down on the way the country's economy functions, to a point where we only have, because generally in Cameroon, the Cameroonians rely on the government, and the government gives the impression that only the government, only itself, can resolve problems of the ordinary Cameroonian.
Okay.
So
which means there should be a shift in the way we think.
Exactly.
And because, like, often people would like to turn to the public service because the private sector is less reliable. Now, when you look at what is happening to the country and look at the government's strategic thinking, and you say the way government is moving and the structural investment, how would you look at, because you look at this, I'll take just one or two examples. The Kribi Deep Sea Port, the first ships have come there. You look at Lompanga, they are already churning out energy, but we are not yet feeling the impact. I mean, the ordinary Cameroonian in Yaoundé.
They are not functioning, Joe. They are not functioning.
But they are almost
functioning.
Okay.
Flatly speaking, they are not functioning.
They're not yet functioning.
Yes, exactly. That's still, in fact, we are still waiting for the launching of the Kribi Deep Sea Port.
It has to officially, but it's functioning already.
Well,
a ship docked there the other day. No, but no, that's a side issue. But I'll come to you, George, shortly. But I like us to welcome TK. We didn't get him 2 weeks ago when he was there. So people are reacting on the social media. He talked about the 100. So can you just give us 1 or 2, 3 reactions so that we see if they can take the questions? Thank you.
Yes, Joe, we have had a number of reactions, particularly concerning can government clean the payroll?
Yes.
We have this from Petit Bazojeli. Say money is being used to build infrastructure that are not very relevant for the state as for now. And we have Michael Frederick who's also saying that the IMF is enslaving Africans, reason being that the loans require a lot of stringent and stiff lending conditions, and most of the loans are to be refunded in hard currency. And our main problem is simply mismanagement. That's the reaction of Michael Frederick. And we also have one from Fabian who says money is being borrowed and is given to ministers to realize projects, but we see nothing. Nobody questions them, which means the money is used for ministers' personal gains. And we have this other reaction saying that 50,000 people receive 100,000 CFA francs monthly. That makes about 50,000 million or 50 billion CFA francs has been lost as money paid to people who are ghost workers.
Okay. When you listen to the way Cameroonians think from the reactions there, and you look at, it means the members of parliament question government ministers on the implementation of their budget, and especially the structural projects. And when you look at what is happening to the country, and you see what the efforts which government is doing, would you think that those structural demands which the lenders are imposing on us are welcomed, or we need a complete change of mentality to be able to get to where we want to get to?
In my view, we need both. And I believe at this point in time, what we need in order to overhaul the economic systems is to transform the management and the governance of the government into a rapid intervention battalion, a kind of beer. Because when money is being borrowed, we have a short time frame to realize the infrastructures.
Okay.
And when it takes 3 to 4 more years for those infrastructures to come to be realized, it has cost additionally. And moreover, in terms of the investment returns, we've lost it. The population has grown up. The opportunities are gone. While we were building the Kribi Deep Sea Port, our neighboring countries had not started this, but the one in Congo Brazzaville, Pointe Noire, is coming into operation. The one in Equatorial Guinea is coming into operation. So the first mover effect of advantage economically that we could have gotten, we've lost it.
Okay.
Moreover, technically and for effectiveness and efficiency, the infrastructure of the port of Douala should have been transferred immediately to Kribi to make it operational, for the fact that we cannot continuously drain the sun for 18 billions every 2 years, and new generations boats are not entering the port of Douala at this point, which will have reduced the transportation costs, for example. So, and that's why we have those distortion and inefficiencies that are still part of our economic structure. The oil shocks and Boko Haram are external shocks, but they are minor compared to what opportunity potentials we are losing and not putting into effect. The agricultural sectors, nothing today prevents us from producing maize, chicken, palm oil, cassava, in order to be self-sustaining on those areas. We have recently imported 2,000 tons of palm oils from Gabon, which started only 5 years ago to come with the free zone, economic free agricultural zone to produce palm oil. So we must look internally of what is really needed. We have some solutions that we can definitely propose to the government that needs to be put into effect. For the risk now of these 3 years loan by IMF is that if we do not meet some of the requirements, we run the risk of not only increasing the debt, but also being forced to take additional measures that are not popular, like privatizations or the reductions of salaries.
God forbid for that, because the salaries haven't even been increased when they were cut. So maybe a last word.
Yeah, Joe, I was just trying to say that we don't need to allow ourselves to be pulled by the nose all the time. I mean, if we have a coherent economic policy like agriculture that he mentioned, I don't know why the government has not actually said, why is plantation agriculture so successful in the southwest region, for example? Why can that not be replicated in other regions and try it out, so that they are talking of second generation agriculture. But if you see samples of these farms of pineapple or whatever, they are of so small a scale. What prevents this plantation type of agriculture that succeeds so well in the southwest region to be replicated in other regions with different crop types?
We're too subsistence in thinking, so we are not industrial. That's the reason.
Barrister, your last word?
Yeah, I think that I think the Cameroonian economy for some time, 30 years ago, was sustained by agriculture, and it worked so well. But I think agriculture has been abandoned because we found ourselves in the oil boom, because we had forests that we could exploit. I'm sure that if we go back to mechanize our agriculture alone can sustain this economy.
Okay. I'd like Mecca to have the last word.
For me, the future relies on our economic competitiveness. And that's where the nation's attempts awaits for the results. To do so, we need to transform our mindset of thinking, our actions, into becoming really a rapid intervention battalion on the economic side. It needs to put those who are in economic mindset and trains into the right positions. Because for now, those who decide on the economy are not economists by training.
But they can tap from the expertise of the economists to be able to, because they are politicians and they have to surround themselves with technicians who are the economists, right?
Yes, but when you are outside, the fact is when you're sometimes outside of the decision center, your views are not taken into account, or that participatory approach. Any view that is different from technical view that challenge the political decision is not always very much decisions has drawbacks. people tend to say, let's implement and wait and see. And that wait and see is conducting us to continuously increase our indebtedness and have prices increases and not really meeting the goal of an emerging nations. But we are in 2017, so we still believe that within the next 18 years we can keep up alive.
Thanks very much. With that optimistic view, we come to the end of this edition of Press Hour. We're looking forward to being with you again same time next week, and God willing, we should be in Bolova, and we'll be discussing living together. That will be our focus in Bolova, besides the news-making events of the week. Until when we meet again, have a nice time on CRTV, and stay with us if you can. Good day and welcome to this edition of our midday magazine program, Press Hour. Today we'll touch on Parliament, given that the Parliament wrapped up deliberations a few days ago, and a lot of members of Parliament have been hailing what they have done during the session, voting more than 5 bills, with one or some that have to do with the very essence of living together. We'll also touch on this aspect that has to do with Cameroon borrowing a lot of money and trying to see how the public service can clean up the payroll and bring sanity to bear on the management of public resources, given that we are borrowing a lot to be able to build our nation and to look forward to our emergence in 2035. To do that with me on the program this midday, we have Barrister Mokum Mujem Fombat. Okay. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you.
We are old friends, but I don't know why I like calling you Metro Fombat. All the same. There is Elias Ngalame. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank
Quite
you.
some time you haven't been on Press Hour.
That's true.
There is Meka George Abesolo. You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's also quite some time you haven't been on Press Hour. I should say Emmanuel Tumanjong of the Associated Press will be joining us shortly. And so I don't want to ask you any question, but I'd like us to move straight to our machines and get what the papers have been writing on this week. Our press review, then we'll come back and have the discussions.
The IMF extended credit facility to Cameroon. Peter Mavani Moronge's resignation as senator, the Bear Herbert and Akara Muna Tic-Tac, plus the Anglophone crisis and many more animated the papers this week. Let's begin reading the Lone National Bilingual Daily Cameroon Tribune Wednesday, wherein on behalf of President Biya, the Secretary General of the Presidency of the Republic signed a note which lauds IMF's gesture to approve some 400 billion from CFA for the implementation of an economic and financial reform program that spans 2017 to 2020. The aid, the paper adds, is expected to help the country recover from the twin shocks of the slump in oil prices and security threats plaguing the Smack-Sap region. Same day, Wednesday, the lone private English daily The Garden Post intimates that IMF mounts pressure on the government to flush out what the paper terms unproductive workers from the public service. But earlier on, that's on Monday, the English bi-weekly The Post newspaper deduced that Cameroonians will soon be grappling with a wave of salary cuts should the government fully give in to the IMF program. Well, Peter Moronge leaves the Senate. Cameroon Tribune Thursday reports his resignation during the Senate's second ordinary session for the 2017 legislative year. The Garden Post on this Thursday edition says will allow him concentrate on his new role as president of the National Commission for the Promotion of Bilingualism and Multiculturalism. The resignation, the post-weekend edition explains that the position of a senator is incompatible with duties including a non-elective office. But before former Senator Muronge could tender his resignation from the upper house of parliament on July 5, Barrister Kerry Muna diagnosed the Anglophone crisis and proposed a way forward in a center-spread write-up published on the Garden Post Monday. Captioned "Things Fall Apart," the barrister has been
supposed to execute.
Well, it is both. I mean, we have to salute what is, for now, an exception and not the rule that many of the public officials have abide with. So what Prime Minister Musonge did, it's an example to follow, and I hope that many will follow his steps.
Okay. But let's go back to what the law says. What happens to his seat?
The standing rules of Senate, they are clear, ambiguous somehow. If you look at Article 20 of the standing rules, it says that in case of interruption of the mandate of a senator, that is, wherever there is a vacancy, except a vacancy by death, the substitute is called upon to take the seat until the mandate runs out, which means here it says that once there is a vacancy, but for vacancy caused by death, the law automatically calls, you don't need any procedure, the law calls the substitute to come and sit and continue the mandate. But when you go to Article 22, 21, it takes now, that is where the problem lies. It says that for senators appointed, in case of vacancy, even vacancy by death, the head of state has to appoint another senator to sit in to complete the mandate. So that is where the problem lies now. So you ask yourself, in the case of Honorable Mafani, he was an appointed senator, there is a vacancy, his seat is vacant now, but by the provisions of Article 21, the person that has to come in must be appointed by a presidential decree. So we must have to wait for a presidential decree to appoint the person who has to come. I understand many questions.
Why have a substitute when he or she cannot automatically fill the vacuum when you are not there?
So that is where there is that legal ambiguity. Because for elected senators, they are elected alongside with their substitute. For appointed senators, unfortunately, the presidential decree appoints a senator and the substitute. But now it says that in case of vacancy of an appointed senator, the president has to appoint somebody to take the seat. So the question we ask ourselves, why then, what is the role of the substitute? Or why then did the head of state appoint the substitute? I think that this is a problem of the law which the senators normally would have. Because they actually voted their standing rules. And strange enough, 100 of them, I'm sure at the time they voted, not one of them saw this ambiguity. Because if they saw this ambiguity, they would have rectified it.
Which means the standing orders give the head of state the possibility of voting somebody, appointing somebody other than the substitute.
Of course, because the law says that the head of state shall appoint another person to take that seat. The law does not say the head of state should appoint the substitute.
Okay.
So the head of state is not under any obligation. But I think faced with this ambiguity, with this embarrassment, I'm sure the safest thing to do in order to save face is for the head of state to immediately appoint the substitute to fill this vacuum while the Senate sits up to rectify their own standing rules.
Okay. Let me come to Emmanuel, who is just coming. We've had very rare situations where vacancies have been filled, and we know quite a number of senators, both those by death and those who were called to other duties. Senator Jikong, Senator Nkwine, the son of Fontaine, and now, but no post has been filled. He just said the question of death, it's supposed to remain vacant, and I understand why. Because they are suspecting that their substitute could
precipitate. His position as a senatorial group leader, that is more of a party issue. and then his position as senator is a national issue. So I think that it was but normal that he starts by giving up the party responsibility before now giving up the national responsibility. So I think the procedure is normal.
Okay, but there are people who observed that he has done one, but he's supposed to have done for almost all other offices he's holding, public offices, notably that which has to do with the national orders.
I don't think the law here won't look. The law says a senator should not hold another post that is compatible.
Okay.
There is no law on the national order that says that it cannot be compatible. So here we are looking at what the standing rules of the Senate say.
So, which, in other words, it means that it is a public office, but which is compatible with his role as president of the National Commission on Bilingualism.
Yes, I think that here we have a legal vacuum, because the law does not clearly spell out which posts are incompatible. They highlight some, like in the case of senators, they say you cannot be, as a senator, you cannot be a mayor, you cannot be mayor, you cannot be you cannot hold any other public non-elective post. But again, the catch here also is that when they say public non-elective post, it is not also clearly defined, because we can say the position of Grand Chancellor, that is an elective, a public post that is not elective. So again, our main problem here is that the law does not clearly define which are the posts that are incompatible.
I see you shake your head in.
Yes, I think, no, I see it otherwise. I think that we really have to hail Mr. Mafani Musonge for the bold step, because these are very rare situations in our country. If we look at our realities, there are people with such accumulation in spite of the laws, but they still hold on to their positions. So if we have a leader who is leading by example, it is just an indication that others should follow suit. At least we must begin from somewhere. So he has started it. He has put on the torchlight. Let the others follow.
Okay. Now, I'd like to come back to you, Barrister. You just made mention about the law, and the law also says that we should not hold public offices. If you hold that of the Grand Chancellor, that is a public office.
Yeah, so I say the law says that as a senator you cannot hold a public non-elective office. Those are incompatible.
Is the trick here around the word elective?
It would not really be that, because Grand Chancellor is non-elective, is also appointed. Yeah, but me, I think that, like he was saying, I think what we should ask ourselves is, how do you have a law that does not have implementation mechanism or sanctions? I mean that the law does not say if you hold those two offices, what is the sanction? That is where the problem is. So now they leave it at the free will of the people who have the two offices to choose, and if you don't choose, nothing is done to you, unfortunately. The law maybe would have precised that in case within a period you don't choose one, you lose both. Maybe it will force them, but the law does not. There's no implementation mechanism on that particular aspect.
Okay, we want to welcome Emmanuel, but let me ask George, when you hear them talk and you see what's happening, because this is not resigning as he did is exceptional, because there are people in the country who hold more than one office, yet you have a mayor and a government minister, mayor and this and so on and so forth, or a mayor and this and so on. So when you see what he does, would you salute what he has done as an example, or you would say it's just a responsibility?
It's a normal thing. I mean, that was a smart article.
You call it a smart word. Okay. Why is it over 3 or 4 or 5 senators are absent, about 95 of them now? So should we say it's because it's functioning normal or normally, and that they have their normal decorum that is attained, and so they can carry out deliberations without any problem? Or else the President of the Republic should have a tight hand to be able to call snap elections to fill the offices, or appoint those he's supposed to appoint to fill the gap.
No, Joe, you have to look at the way Cameroon's Parliament operates, whether it's the lower or the upper house, excuse me, it is that generally for the elections I've covered in Cameroon for over 20 years plus, is that the ruling party does everything to have absolute majority in Parliament. So what happens here is that within the Senate, that's the upper house, the ruling party, that's the CPDM, has absolute majority. If you remove 5 of those, or even maybe about 10 of those senators from the House, whether it's by someone by being called to other duties, or maybe staying, or maybe by death or by incapabilities, the truth about it is that the party continues to control. So the head of state, by being, like almost, I'll put that in quotes, indifferent, is simply because he knows that there are no stakes, which means the ruling party will continue to keep its majority in Parliament. In this case, if you see, I'm very happy that Metri Mujem is here, because Barrister Mujem is here, because he's giving us some very good, technical explanations as to how the laws were even shaped, before those elections were called up, and that now you have the House functioning. The idea is keeping the majority, and so that if there are bills are coming, they'll be voted. If there are no bills, and there's all these guys who are in Parliament, most of them are former government workers. So, but I'll come back to the fact that what George said a short while ago is salutary for the former PM to have resigned, but the resignation, because of the ambiguity and the cloud surrounding it, makes it cosmetic, in that he has some other duties. If he had resigned while he was not having the new appointments, it would have been dramatic, in a sense that would have been music. People would have been wondering why he did all of this, because he has other duties like Grand Chancellor of the of National Order of Valor, and other key duties like the one he's just been given by the head of state. So in essence, it's almost eventual, and this is somebody everybody knows PM Musonge as somebody who's very hardworking, who has intellectual and professional capabilities. So, but if he does this, and the cloud is still surrounding, sometimes we ask questions as to why the government keeps silent, and after he resigns in such a key position. Okay. But if he had resigned from, for instance, the new appointments, and also from the Grand Chancellor of...
no, you take the most recent.
Yeah, no, you can resign from all the 3 posts.
Even including the most recent?
Because the reasons have not been clear enough as to why he resigned.
Because he wanted to concentrate on the National Commission on Bilingualism and Multiculturalism.
That is what he says.
Yes.
That is just what he says. He might have simply told the head of state that he would have simply told the head of state that I can keep the new appointment because I have these other appointments. Those are the technicalities here. The idea is that we perceive the issues as though, although it's the head of state who appoints, the head of state could still meet a case where some of those appointees say, no, please, I can't keep this post.
Then you will not appoint them.
Yes,
so it will not come to public notice. I'm sure there are people who do that behind the scenes. I'm sure there are people who do that behind the scenes. But generally, you know that human nature would want, because those who can exercise would say...
Objected to a one-on-one criticism by former CRTV journalist Bill Herbert. The Voice newspaper puts both articles side by side for readers' appreciation. The Garden Post, Friday, banners PCC OK's schools to promote all pupils and students to next class. The paper says the Presbyterian Education Authority has also expressed readiness to fully begin the 2017-2018 academic year in 2 Anglophone regions come September. Cameroon Tribune, the Garden Post, the Post, and the Voice newspapers all came back to the press release from the Procureur General of the Yaoundé Court of Appeal on the post-mortem examinations carried out on late Bishop Bala. And these private papers and more also reported on the recent appointments within the state broadcaster, the Cameroon Radio Television, although with adjacent analysis. Well, that does it on our press review today. I look forward to coming your way, God willing, Sunday.
Okay, thanks very much, Larry Efandi. I'd like us to begin with the nation, or parliament rather. What's your take on the series of bills? There are so many that touched on the legal department, especially that creating a common law division at the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think as a lawyer and as an Anglophone, I think that bill is welcome because that forms part of the points put forward by the Anglophone lawyers. So I'm sure that bill goes to enhance our living together.
Okay. Is there any other one that touched your interest as a person besides
yes,
that one?
I think I was touched by the Economic Commission, the reforms of this institution. I think many Cameroonians have over the years cried that the institution has become moribund and there was need to change, to really precise their role and make them impactful in society.
Okay. George, is any of the bills voted that touched you from Parliament?
Yes, the most important bill for me was the reform of the National and Social Economic Council, which is much awaited for its inertia for many years. So we hope that with this reform, it will put its weight on advising the president and the governments on the much better decision and economic program this nation's needs the most, and which has become the center of our economy and economic and political situations right now.
Okay. One of the key things which happened at the Senate was the resignation of Mr. Peter Mafani Musonge. I remember in March or so, he stepped down as the parliamentary group leader because of his being appointed into that the commission that has to do with our bilingualism and multiculturalism. But people were asking the question, why it's as if the resignations are coming piecemeal.
I don't think the
piecemeal in the sense that one at a time.
Yeah. I don't think it comes in piecemeal because you see the law on the standing orders of the Senate, Article 22 clearly spells out situations where there is incompatibility, and they say a senator cannot at the same time hold a public non-elective post. So as soon as from the time when Mr. Mafani was appointed the president of the Commission on Bilingualism, he knew that normally he was supposed to give up the mandate as a senator. You know, the mandate as his